Join us on the 6.5 miles kayak from Oxwich to Caswell Bay on the Gower Peninsula on the 21st of April 2024. Watch on to learn about the stunning beaches we passed on this route, including Oxwich Bay, Three Cliffs Bay, Pwll Beach and Caswell Bay. The history of this area, including Oxwich Castle, Pennard Castle and the dubious practices of smuggling and wrecking which were practiced in days gone by on this stretch of coast. What kayaks we used on this trip, and the towering cliffs and splendid scenery of the South Gower coastline. This 6.5 miles paddle was on a stretch of the South Gower coast between Oxwich and Caswell Bay. We launched at about 2:15 p.m. from Oxwich and paddled eastwards along the 2.5 miles of golden sands of Oxwich Bay. After a brief lunch stop at Three Cliffs Bay, we continued eastwards past several miles of towering cliffs before another brief stop at Pwll Beach. We finally landed at Caswell Bay at about 5:30 p.m. We've just parked up at Oxwich Bay and we're carrying our 3 inflatable kayaks down to the water's edge. It's a little bit of a trek because the tide is still out a fair way. It's just gone 2:15 p.m. and we've launched from Oxwich. Di and Ethan seem to be making a beeline for Pwll Head. I think they've forgotten we're going to stop for lunch at Three Cliffs Bay. Oxwich Bay is one of Gower's most popular beaches with good access, plenty of parking and 2.5 miles of golden sands backed by sand dunes, salt marshes and woodlands. Oxwich is a small seaside village situated 11 miles west from Swansea in South Wales. Once a port exporting limestone quarried from the headland of Oxwich Point, the village is now a quiet backwater except for the summer months when it comes alive with visitors. The Oxwich Bay Hotel is something of a Gower institution nestled in the western end of Oxwich Bay overlooking the beach. The 6th century St Ittla's Church is just down the path from the hotel towards Oxwich Head. Oxwich Castle is actually a fortified Tudor manor house built on and incorporating the original 14th century castle. Oxwich has a history of both smuggling and wrecking. Fortunately, none of the locals were out trying to lure our kayaks onto the rocks on the day of our trip. In 1911, Oxwich Beach was the venue for the first aeroplane flight in Wales by Mr. E. Sutton in his Blériot monoplane. We gradually neared the eastern end of Oxwich Bay, where there is a smaller beach called Tor Bay, and then the renowned Three Cliffs Bay. Pwll Head loomed in the distance. Archie and I were using a tandem version of the sandbank style Optimal kayak, which is a full drop stitch kayak which inflates to 10 to 12 psi and hence looks and behaves very similar to a hard shell. We have done a review of the Sandbanks Optimal kayak in our product reviews playlist of our YouTube channel and also on our website, which is linked below. Great Tor is the Gower's tallest crag, separating Tor Bay from Three Cliffs Bay. We plan to rendezvous with Ethan and Di at Three Cliffs Bay for a beer and lunch stop. We've just rounded the headland known as Great Tor and we're looking towards Three Cliffs Bay, which is arguably one of the best beaches down the Gower. On the top of the hill there overlooking Three Cliffs Bay you can see the remains of Pennard Castle. It was built back in the 1200s apparently by the dubious Norman family. Just getting a closer view of Pennard Castle. Apparently the castle and the adjacent village were abandoned in the 1400s due to encroaching sands. Unfortunately the lunch spot that Di and Ethan chose at Three Cliffs Bay was a little bit too close to the water's edge and the tide has come in and rudely interrupted our lunch break. We're back on the water after our abruptly curtailed lunch break. We'll just have to finish our sandwiches and our beers as we paddle along. As per the sea swell forecast that we checked on surfforecast.com, it's quite a flat sea today. There seems to be a relatively safe section of the coast. I think it's sheltered by Oxwich Head from the western swell. Archie and I were enjoying paddling the Sandbanks Optimal kayak. We prefer using tandem kayaks. We find it more sociable because you can have a chat as you paddle along. Although I guess sometimes it depends who you were sharing the kayak with. South Gower has a history of smuggling and that looks like a potential smuggler's cave over there. If the tide was higher then we'd paddle in and have a look for some contraband. There's some people climbing on the rocks over there. I have to say that relatively speaking sea kayaking seems perfectly safe compared to rock climbing. You certainly get to paddle past some amazing scenery on the Gower coastline. A lot of it wouldn't look out of place in the Mediterranean. Ethan and Di certainly seem to be taking a more direct route than us. That's Pwll Head ahead of us, which is the highest headland in the Gower apparently. There's a group of oyster catchers on the rocks over there as we come round to Pwll Head. They're quite distinctive with their black and white plumage and red beaks. As we rounded Pwll Head, we were now over 2/3 of the way along the route and looking forward to a post-paddle beer at the Pilot Inn at Mumbles. Mumbles is only about 10 minutes drive from the end of this route to Caswell. The Pilot Inn in Mumbles is one of our favourite pubs with a great selection of beers and a nautical theme which makes the kayak crew feel right at home. Another of the kayak crew's regular haunts is the Mermaid Cafe in Mumbles, which is a great place for some post-kayak food to replace the calories that you've burned off paddling. Our inflatable armada rounded Pwll Head and swung in towards Pwll Beach for another short stop off. Pwll is steeped in history, having once been a haven for local smugglers. There is a nearby gully called Gravesend, so called due to the burial of several people who were found dead on their bay following a ship called the Caesar ending up wrecked upon the shore in 1760. During the 19th century, it was a centre for limestone quarrying. The two cottages situated on the western side of the beach were originally inns called the Ship and the Beaufort. The Shipston Valley provides a fine backdrop to the limestone pebbled Pwll Beach. The valley is carpeted with ancient woodlands and runs inland up towards Kittle and Bishopston. I think that Archie and I might have been engaging in a bit of smuggling themselves because I noticed that they had some bottles of cider stashed underneath the decks of their kayaks. I've come across 3 smugglers on Pwll Beach. They look like more of a motley crew than the kayak crew. We're back on the water after a brief stop at Pwll Beach. It's the final push on towards Caswell Bay, which you can see on the left hand side over there. Di's using his trusty old Pro Aqua kayak today, which is made from traditional low pressure chamber construction. I think it's about time he finally upgraded to a drop stitch inflatable kayak. In between Pwll and Caswell we passed Brandy Cove, which gets its name from stories of smugglers using the bay to unload their illegal tobacco and alcohol goods during the 18th century. We're in the process of paddling every section of the 870 miles of the Wales coast, and the inset map shows in red the sections we'd already paddled, up to us doing this Gower kayak in April 2024. Ethan was using an Aquaspirit inflatable kayak on this trip, which is a hybrid inflatable with a high pressure drop stitch floor chamber and 2 lower pressure side pontoons. If you enjoyed the video, then please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing by clicking on the left below. Click on the right below to be taken to the playlist of videos of our other trips around the Wales coast. Don't forget to check out our website, which is linked below. Happy paddling from the kayak crew.